For decades, Iran and Israel fought a shadow war: proxies, cyber attacks, assassinations. This conflict simmered beneath the surface, rarely acknowledged but always present, shaping the politics and security of the entire region. Each side probed the other's defenses, striking from the shadows, careful never to cross the line into open war. The world watched, uneasy, as these two regional powers waged a silent battle, their actions echoing through Lebanon, Syria, and beyond. But in June 2025, that cold conflict exploded into open warfare, threatening to engulf the Middle East. The fragile balance shattered overnight as the first explosions lit up the sky. Suddenly, the world was forced to confront the reality of a war that had long been feared but never fully imagined. The world watched in shock as Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a massive, meticulously planned aerial assault targeting Iran's most sensitive nuclear facilities at Natanz and Arak. The operation was the culmination of years of intelligence gathering and military preparation, designed to cripple Iran's nuclear program in a single, decisive blow. The strikes quickly expanded, hitting command centers, missile sites, and tragically residential neighborhoods in Tehran. The devastation was immediate and widespread, with emergency responders racing through rubble-strewn streets, searching for survivors amid the chaos. The line between military and civilian targets blurred as the cost of war became heartbreakingly clear. Iran's response was swift. Operation True Promise 3. Within hours, Iranian commanders mobilized, determined to show the world that Iran would not be cowed. The war room in Tehran buzzed with activity as military leaders coordinated a massive counterstrike. Hundreds of missiles and drones rained down on Israel, overwhelming even the Iron Dome. The skies above Israeli cities filled with streaks of light as interceptors tried desperately to stop the onslaught. For the first time, Israel's vaunted defenses were pushed to their limits. Some projectiles broke through, striking cities and infrastructure, proving nowhere was safe. Sirens wailed as civilians scrambled for shelter, and emergency crews worked through the night to rescue the wounded and contain fires. The sense of vulnerability was palpable, as ordinary life was shattered in an instant. For Israel, the goal was clear: to cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions and send a message that it would not tolerate a nuclear-armed adversary on its doorstep. Israeli generals weighed every move, knowing the stakes could not be higher. For Iran, it was to show it could inflict real pain in return, rallying its people and allies in defiance. Across Iranian cities, crowds gathered, some in protest, others in support, united by a sense of national resolve and anger at the devastation. The shadow war was over. Now, millions of civilians were caught in a direct, devastating confrontation. Families fled their homes, seeking safety wherever they could, as the specter of all-out war loomed over the region. The region teetered on the edge of catastrophe, as leaders on both sides doubled down. Emergency meetings stretched into the night, military convoys rolled toward borders, and red alerts flashed across television screens warning of further escalation. The world's worst fears were suddenly, violently realized. As the conflict burst into the open, the international community watched in horror, knowing that the consequences of this war would be felt far beyond the Middle East. The cost for ordinary Iranians was immediate and heartbreaking. By June 18th, official reports counted over 220 dead, mostly civilians. Human rights groups said the toll was even higher. Hospitals overflowed with nearly 2,000 wounded as Israeli airstrikes devastated Tehran and other cities. Rescue crews dug through rubble with bare hands, searching for survivors. Stories of lost children and families gripped the nation. The government imposed an internet blackout, deepening isolation and fear. Streets emptied, funerals multiplied, and the Iranian Red Crescent struggled to keep up with the mounting crisis. For Iranians, war was no longer distant politics. It was a brutal daily reality. The nation mourned, united by grief and uncertainty. In Israel, life became a relentless cycle of sirens and shelter, a rhythm of fear that echoed through every city and town. Each day, families braced themselves for the wail of alarms, grabbing children and rushing to the nearest safe room or underground bunker. The sound of sirens became as familiar as the morning call to breakfast, but far more ominous. Despite Israel's advanced air defense systems, the sheer volume of Iranian missiles overwhelmed the Iron Dome. Some broke through, leaving devastation in their wake. 24 civilians lost their lives, and hundreds more were wounded, their lives forever changed in an instant. Emergency responders raced from one impact site to another, working tirelessly amid chaos and destruction. Cities across the country, from Haifa in the north to to Beersheba in the south was struck. In Bat Yam, a missile tore through an apartment building, killing 6 people as they slept. In Rishon-LeZion, rescue workers pulled a baby alive from the rubble, a rare moment of hope amid the devastation. The destruction was indiscriminate, sparing no one. The June 19th strike on Soroka Medical Center in Beersheba wounded dozens, turning a place of healing into a war zone. Doctors and nurses worked under fire, treating patients in hallways and makeshift triage centers, their own safety constantly at risk. Schools closed their doors, playgrounds fell silent, and public life ground to a halt. Children, once carefree, now spent their days in shelters, their laughter replaced by anxious whispers. Streets that once bustled with life became deserted, as fear and uncertainty gripped the nation. Yet, in the face of terror, communities rallied together. Volunteers delivered food and supplies to those in need. Blood donation drives surged, and neighbors checked on one another. Acts of kindness and resilience became a lifeline, helping people endure the darkest days. But no amount of unity could erase the ever-present fear. Every siren was a chilling reminder that nowhere was truly safe. The anxiety was constant, etched into the faces of young and old alike, as families huddled together, waiting for the next attack. Israelis endured, but the scars, both visible and invisible, deepened with every attack. Trauma lingered in every household, and the sense of loss was overwhelming. The war's reach was total, touching every home, every heart, and leaving a nation forever changed by the relentless shadow of conflict. This was a war fought not just on battlefields, but in the crosshairs of leadership. Israel targeted Iran's top commanders, killing IRGC chief Hossein Salami, military chief Mohammad Hossein Bagheri, and aerospace head Amir Ali Hajizadeh. Their deaths left a leadership vacuum and rattled Iran's war machine. For Israel, these strikes were psychological victories, proof that no one was untouchable. Iran tried to retaliate, reportedly injuring key advisor Ali Shamkhani and targeting Israeli command centers. While Israel avoided similar high-level losses, its leaders remained on constant alert. The hunt for commanders intensified the conflict, making it personal and unpredictable. The stakes had never been higher for those at the top. Daily life in both Iran and Israel was shattered. In Iran, airstrikes destroyed cities, forced families to flee, and left those behind facing shortages and trauma. The internet blackout fueled fear and rumors, while rescue workers became symbols of hope amid devastation. In Israel, the threat was constant. Sirens sent people scrambling to shelters and anxiety soared, especially among children. Businesses closed, tourism vanished, and even hospitals weren't safe. Both nations faced economic collapse and psychological scars. The war was not distant. It was in every home, every street. Certainty vanished, replaced by fear and survival. Two societies forever changed by war. As Iran and Israel clashed, the world braced for disaster. The US backed Israel with rhetoric and warships, but stopped short of direct intervention, leaving its next move uncertain. Russia and China called for restraint, wary of a wider war that could threaten their interests and global oil supplies. European leaders scrambled for diplomacy, fearing a regional explosion. The specter of World War III loomed, as analysts warned a single misstep could ignite a global crisis. The Houthi movement in Yemen threatened to join the fight, raising the risk of attacks on shipping. Most believed global war was unlikely, unless the US or Russia got directly involved. The world held its breath, hoping the violence could be contained. Amid the chaos and thunder of war, faint hopes for peace began to flicker, almost imperceptible but persistent. In the shadow of devastation, small gestures of humanity and resilience emerged, moments where hope dared to exist, even as the world seemed to unravel. International diplomats, working tirelessly behind closed doors, scrambled to broker a ceasefire as civilian casualties mounted and the humanitarian crisis deepened. Every hour brought new urgency, and every negotiation felt like a race against time. The stakes could not have been higher, with millions of lives hanging in the balance. The United Nations, alarmed by the escalating violence, called for an immediate halt to hostilities. An emergency Security Council meeting was set for June 20th, drawing the eyes of the world to New York. The hope was that global pressure might finally force a pause in the bloodshed. Turkey, Qatar, and several European nations launched urgent diplomatic missions, shuttling between capitals in a frantic search for a face-saving deal. Their envoys carried messages of compromise, seeking any opening that could lead to dialogue and de-escalation. Despite public defiance and hardline rhetoric, subtle signs began to emerge that Iran might be willing to consider talks, perhaps even on its nuclear program, a subject long considered untouchable. Behind the scenes, cautious optimism grew among some observers. The sheer scale of devastation forced both sides to confront a stark choice: continue down the path of destruction or risk the uncertainties of diplomacy. The cost of war was becoming impossible to ignore, and the pressure to find a way out mounted with each passing day. Across the world, ordinary people gathered in vigils and demonstrations, their voices rising in a collective plea for peace. The path forward was uncertain, but hope endured, fragile, yet unyielding. Many clung to the belief that reason and compassion could prevail before the region was consumed by further tragedy. The suffering of civilians, families torn apart, children displaced, lives shattered, served as a stark reminder that the true cost of war is always paid by the innocent. Their pain underscored the urgent need for peace, and the world watched, hoping that this time the faint drumbeat of peace would finally be heard.